Hello friends, welcome to another episode of Smart Coach videos. In today's episode, we are going to talk specifically about the early attempts by Gandhi at Satyagraha in India. Okay, so these attempts come in the form of, Champaran, then we have got Ahmedabad, and we have got Kheda. All right, and then we will also look into the Rowlatt Satyagraha. Okay. Now, things to remember before we go into Champaran, Ahmedabad, Khera, Rowlatt Satyagraha. Let us look at the dates. Champaran 1917, Ahmedabad 1918, Khera 1918 and Rowlatt Satyagraha 1919. However, even before these dates, one date we have to remember is the date of 1915. It is on the date of 1915 that Gandhi returns from South Africa. Okay, South Africa to India. All right, and from 1915 itself, he begins his constructive work, or he begins his work into forming an alliance with a political party who would submit to his ideas of Satyagraha, who would submit to his ideas of passive resistance and non-cooperation. Okay, so from 1915 itself, Gandhi begins to make political headways, and his first experimentations take part in this phase. Okay, and then he would launch the larger experiment of non-cooperation during the non-cooperation movement, along with the by allying with the Khilafat and the Congress. Okay, so now let us proceed. As far as the return from 1915 is concerned, it is based heavily upon the Gandhi's success in South Africa. Okay, Gandhi had already signed a deal with the with the government of South Africa, with the South African government and General Smuts. Okay, the Gandhi Smuts Agreement, which is known as Gandhi Smuts Agreement, according to which certain concessions had been given to the Indian residents of South Africa, such as concessions of registration. He was fighting against the registration policy of the government, that Indians had to register themselves and had to carry the registration papers at all times. He was fighting this. And then the Marriage Act, according to which those marriages which were not conducted in the Christian rites, along with the conducted around Christian rites, will not be recognized as legal marriages. Okay, he was fighting against registration, the Marriage Act, and along with that, he was also fighting against the immigration laws. Okay, immigration laws for Indians. All right, this was also another important part, and then along with that, he was also fighting against racism. And the poll tax, previous to that, we will also have to discuss the poll tax. Okay, tax which was collected from the indentured labor of South Africa, the Indian indentured laborers of South Africa. Okay, the poll tax, he was fighting against that, and he was also launching a generalized fight against racism in South Africa. And his the deal between Smuts and Gandhi, which was signed, it was seen as a great victory, and that's why he was invited to India. Okay, and he was invited to give the freedom movement in India a new direction, and he came back to India, and we see that the direction that he is given from the Champaran Satyagraha. Okay, so what is Satyagraha? Of course, Satyagraha is a non-violent movement. Literally, it means the search for truth. Okay, and it is a non-violent movement, and through this non-violent movement of non-cooperation and sometimes even civil disobedience. Non-cooperation and civil disobedience are two different things. Okay, in a non-cooperation movement, you stop cooperating with the government, but in civil disobedience, it is a more proactive form of non-cooperation, in which, along with not cooperating with the government, that is not working with the government which is ruling you, in civil disobedience, you also court arrest by defying the laws of the government. Okay, civil disobedience, that is, you are disobeying the laws of the government. Okay, and by defying the government, you also court court punishment. And by doing both of these things, what you are trying to do is you are trying to undermine the hegemony of the government which is ruling you. So these ideas were deployed in the form of Champaran, Ahmedabad and Khera. Let us look at Champaran first of all. Okay, as far as Champaran is concerned, it is born out of the grievances of the people of Champaran, was born out of the Teen Kathiya system. Okay, Teen Kathiya system. Now, the Teen Kathiya system was a system in which peasant was asked to cultivate indigo. Okay, peasant was asked to cultivate indigo in the 3 by 20th part of his land. Okay, so suppose you own 100 hectares of land, so you would be asked to cultivate indigo in 30 hectares. Okay, and this proved to be an oppressive measure. Okay, this measure was placed, it was placed by the planters. Okay, the British planters, and it proved to be very oppressive towards Indian, and the situation was Indian peasants, and the situation was exacerbated by the fact that in the late 19th century, Germany had already invented synthetic dyes. Okay, and because of the invention of synthetic dyes, the demand for Indian indigo, it had decreased, and therefore the planters, in order to maximize their profits, they started collecting illegal taxes. Okay, and they started enforcing illegal taxes upon the peasants. In order, those peasants who were demanding to get out of the system, they would have to submit illegal taxes to the planters, and this system was wholly resented by the individual peasants. Okay, and therefore Gandhi was invited to lead a movement in the Champaran district. Okay, Gandhi was invited to lead a movement in the Champaran district by Rajkumar Shukla. And see, after Gandhi arrived, what he did was he started a non-cooperation movement within Champaran, and it was a non-violent movement, non-cooperation movement. Okay, and through this movement, he demanded from the government that the Teen Kathiya system should be abolished, and that the peasants should be given respite from the Teen Kathiya system. Okay, although the government did not agree with they did agree with the abolition of the Teen Kathiya system. What we see that the entire amount of money or entire amount of illegal taxes which were collected from the peasants, it was not given back to the peasants, but only a percentage of it was given back to the peasants. The percentage that was returned to the peasants was 25%. Okay, and all of this was done after a committee of inquiry was formed, of which was headed by, okay, the committee of inquiry into the Teen Kathiya system, or the Champaran, whatever was happening in Champaran, was headed by Gandhi himself. Okay. All right, and so this was seen as the first victory of Gandhi in India. Although the entire amount of money, illegal taxes that were collected from the peasants was not returned, at least 25% of it was returned. Okay, and this was done in order to have an easy, you see, you can also call it, you can also look at it in such a way that this was done in order to achieve a victory, because if the entire amount was because if the entire amount were asked, okay, there was a doubt if the government would allow the entire amount of money that had been taken by the planters to be returned. Okay, so some kind of negotiation skills also we are able to see during the Champaran movement. 25% was of course returned, and Gandhi, this was done after an inquiry was held into the Teen Kathiya system, and Gandhi himself was the Gandhi himself chaired or led the inquiry committee. Okay, and in this venture, in Gandhi's venture into Champaran, there are some important names that are associated with Gandhi at that point of time, and we also have to remember these names because they are important from an MCQ perspective. So here we have J.B. Kriplani. Okay, we also have Mazar ul Haq. All right, and most importantly, we have Rajendra Prasad. So together, these people were able to, okay, together with Gandhi, they were able to, get the Teen Kathiya system abolished in Champaran. Now, from Champaran, we proceed into the Ahmedabad mill strike. Okay, Ahmedabad mill strike, and the event is of 1918. Okay, here in Ahmedabad mill, okay, all right, the owners had stopped the plague bonus. Okay, they had discontinued the plague bonus, and the workers started demanding the bonus. Okay, and Gandhi came into the scene, and you see started negotiating on behalf of the workers. Okay, he started negotiating with the owners on behalf of the workers, and what he suggested was that the workers asked for 35% increase in wages. Okay, 35% increase in wages. However, the owners were only willing to concede 20% of the plague bonus. Now forget about wages or increase in wages. The owners were not, you see, the plague bonus had already been discontinued, and the owners were only willing to give 20% of the plague bonus, and there no increase in wages, and therefore the Gandhi asked them to, you see, form a strike. Okay, and Gandhi himself went into a fast unto death. Okay, and this is the first instance in India in which Gandhi tried this political tactic of fasting. Okay, fasting, which had previously been a religious, you see, a part of religious tradition of Hinduism, he brought it to the political forum, and for the first time he applied the technique of fasting as a political tool, and this, according to Gandhi, would break the resolve of the enemy and make the enemy more pliable. And this did happen because the owners of the Ahmedabad mill, they did relent, and they gave the 35% increase in wages. So this was even a more resounding victory than that of the Champaran. Okay, and after this victory at Ahmedabad, we see that Gandhi moved on to Khera. Okay, and this event comes in 1918. Okay, Khera. And out here, the discontentment among the peasants was brought up because of the fact that the rains had failed, and it was a situation of famine which had been created at Khera district of Gujarat. Okay, Khera district of Gujarat. All right, and the government regulation was that once the crops fall to 1/4 of total produce, once the crops fall to just below 1/4 of the total produce, you see, the peasants were eligible for remission. Okay, so suppose you were about to produce 100 kilograms. I'm just giving you an example. So your land was about to produce 100 kilograms of wheat, but the production fell as low as 1/4. So you, according to the extent laws, you are eligible for remission, and this was not followed by the British government, and therefore Gandhi here also he launched a program of Satyagraha. Okay, here too Satyagraha was launched. All right, and you see, although the government did not relent in this case, but a secret order was passed. Okay, although there was no public response by the government. Okay, publicly they still you see, they would not relent, but there was a secret you see, order passed by government in this instance, that you see, only those who are able to pay, only those peasants who are able to pay are going to pay the taxes for that particular year. Okay, not all peasants, those peasants who are able to pay, only from them taxes would be collected. Okay, this you see, in Khera we see that no rent movement was used. Okay, no rent movement was used as a political tool, that the payment of rent or payment of taxes to the government or rent on land to the government was used. Okay, non-payment of rent was used as a political tool. Okay, and the government had to relent, although not publicly, but at least in the secretly an ordinance was passed as by whereby, you see, they were the officials were asked that only those peasants who could pay should pay the taxes for that particular year. And in this movement, in the Khera movement, we see that for the first time Vallabhbhai Patel was exposed. Vallabhbhai Patel was exposed to the Gandhian form of Satyagraha, okay, or the Gandhian form of confronting the British government in India, and therefore we see that from the Khera movement itself, we see that Vallabhbhai Patel becomes a associate of Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, so these were the three important movements in which Gandhi took part after he returned from South Africa, and these three were very important during the formative phase of Gandhi's political career in India, because in these three movements what we see is that the tools which Gandhi is going to deploy during the successive stages of the national movement in India, the tools were tried out in these three very important movements. Okay, the tool of non-cooperation, okay, and civil disobedience, the tool of fasting, and the tool of no rent movement, all of these things were used by Gandhi as per, you see, to develop his political strategy against the British in India. And then we go on from here, okay, from the Champaran and from Ahmedabad mill strike and from Khera, we go on to the Rowlatt Satyagraha, which was, you see, although these movements were important, these movements were victorious, these movements were important, but from there on we have to go on a mass-based movement, okay. And the first mass-based movement which we see under Gandhi is that of the Rowlatt Satyagraha. It was an all-India movement because we see that the movement had spread to parts of northern India, most parts of northern India, okay. It was a generalized hartal for all over India, okay. So we will discuss the Rowlatt Satyagraha now, and let us look at how Gandhi tried to bring in mass participation now. Okay, now let us look into the Rowlatt Satyagraha. Okay, the Rowlatt Act also is known as the, you see, anarchic and revolutionary Crimes Act. And the Rowlatt Satyagraha was motivated towards certain prescriptions of the Anarchic and Revolutionary Crimes Act. It is known as Rowlatt Act because Sir Sidney Rowlatt was the head of the committee which had proposed this particular bill, okay, the head of the committee which had proposed the Anarchic and Revolutionary Crimes Act, and therefore it is known as the Rowlatt Act, okay. And a feature of the Rowlatt Act was that, you see, a very important element of all democratic governments, okay, or all modern governments, is that you see, imprisonment can happen only after trial, right? But this provision of trial before imprisonment, okay, of being brought to a magistrate at least and being heard, okay, this could be short circuited by using the Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act, okay. It could lead to imprisonment without trial, and this particular feature of the Rowlatt Act, okay, which was introduced in order to counter the revolutionary activities of the revolutionary terrorists, this particular feature came under attack, okay, during the Rowlatt Satyagraha, okay. And the Rowlatt Satyagraha was a mass-based satyagraha, and it was a all India or pan-India satyagraha, okay. And parts of Bengal, Gujarat, and, you see, most importantly Punjab saw serious agitations during the Rowlatt Satyagraha, okay. There was an all India hartal which was proclaimed in the 6th of April, okay. And, you see, it was proclaimed by Gandhi, and this hartal was this hartal was observed, okay. However, in these areas of Bengal, Gujarat and Punjab, we see that the movement, which was essentially a non-violent movement, okay, it was conceived of as non-violent by Gandhi, okay, and this essentially non-violent movement became very violent, okay. And this, you see, was the first instance in which Gandhi was forced to reckon with the fact that control over the masses is not a very easy thing to have, okay. Although the prescriptions were for non-violence, okay, we see that in Punjab especially, okay, the movement became very violent, okay. The movement became very violent, and there were serious repercussions to this movement. In Punjab, we see that martial law was declared. Martial law was declared by the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab, General O'Dwyer, okay, Michael O'Dwyer. Lieutenant Governor of Punjab, Michael O'Dwyer, he had declared martial law in Punjab, and he had deputized General Dyer, okay, to impose the martial law. Okay, General Dyer was asked by Michael O'Dwyer to impose the martial law, and we know what was the consequence. The consequence was that on the Baisakhi, 13th of April, okay, April on Baisakhi, we see that people had gathered at the Jallianwala Bagh, okay, all right, and the massacre took place at Jallianwala Bagh. Of course, we have a video, separate video, which is devoted to the massacre of Jallianwala Bagh. You can look into it for further details, but we, in this video, what can be specified is that on the 13th of April, that is Baisakhi, people had gathered in Jallianwala Bagh to protest against the imposition of martial law and against the arrest of popular leaders such as Saifuddin Kichlu. Okay. They were there to protest the imposition of you see the repression which was imposed by the British government, and they were there to protest the arrest of popular leaders such as Saifuddin Kichlu. And these people who had peacefully gathered there and who were just protesting the activities of government peacefully, they were shot upon by the contingent commanded by General Dyer. Okay, and we see that this act by General Dyer also met with approval in the British House of Lords. All right. So this was, we can see the repression was quite organized and quite sanctioned. Okay, it was a sanctioned and organized repression from the British government. Okay, and this had come in consequence of the violence which was perpetrated, okay, during the Rowlatt Satyagraha, because as we already talked about, the Rowlatt Satyagraha could not remain a non-violent movement, but indeed certain Europeans had also been killed during the protest of the Rowlatt Satyagraha. It had become very violent in Punjab, okay, and therefore in Punjab we see the greatest repression coming in the form of the massacre during the in Jallianwala Bagh, okay. Out here we also see that Rabindranath Tagore had refused to accept the knighthood because as as a protest against the massacre of Jallianwala Bagh, okay. And Gandhi, keeping in view that it had become the Rowlatt Satyagraha had become very violent, he cancelled the Rowlatt Satyagraha, okay. He suspended the Rowlatt Satyagraha, and from there on the realization was made that more constructive work was necessary. Okay, more constructive work in the sense that people are to be made aware in the modalities of Satyagraha, okay, in the modalities of non-violent, non-cooperation and non-violent civil disobedience, how to proceed with them, okay, how not to become violent, or even the leaders, their grip on the popular masses, it had to be analyzed, okay, and for that the leadership should take some time off. However, we see that right after the Rowlatt Satyagraha, there was also the launching of the Khilafat and the non-cooperation movement. We see that the leadership, although they were aware of the lessons of Rowlatt Satyagraha, they did not pay much attention to that, and therefore the culmination is seen in the Chauri Chaura incident, which happened at the close of the non-cooperation, at the closing of the non-cooperation movement. Okay, such violences, instances of violences, prompted Gandhi to suspend the non-cooperation movement also. Okay, and therefore adequate importance was paid to constructive work, and therefore we see that by the start of the civil disobedience movement, Congress had done the Indian National Congress had done quite a bit of constructive work at the grassroots level, and therefore the civil disobedience movement stayed largely within the ambit of non-violence. Okay, however, the Rowlatt Satyagraha and the non-cooperation movement had deviated from them. So I hope the first few instances of Gandhi's implementation of the ideals of Satyagraha, that is Champaran, Ahmedabad, Khera and Rowlatt Satyagraha, are quite clear to you by now. I hope you had a good time. I hope you'll be studying hard. Thank you.